Hello everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Before we jump into our article, there's a couple of things I'd like to touch on. First, I've been in contact with an artist. His name is Jerry Pesce, P-E-S-C-E, and he is a friend of mine from way back. And I've talked to him about possibly commissioning him to do a complete overhaul of the artwork for the Jeffrey Epstein podcast. Now, when we first started this podcast, I never expected it to reach 560,000 downloads or anything like that. It was all just an organic, basically sitting out in the backyard, talking shit kind of thing. Right? Because this is what we did anyway. We would sit around in the backyard and we'd talk about the news and, I would read between the lines and, all of that's the same jazz we do here on the podcast. So we decided, Lee and I, to turn it into an actual podcast. And we figured we'd get, some traction with our friends, our small group of friends who like to listen to me become apoplectic every now and again. I figured that they would tune in, but I never ever thought that it would be at the level that it's at right now. And to be honest with you, I get messages from people and, telling me how thankful they are for my work and et cetera, et cetera. And it's humbling for me because it's never my goal. I'm not one of those people who is a self-promoter or anything like that. I just come on here every day, 2 times a day and let loose because it is so enraging what's going on that there was no way that I could just sit back and be silent. So that's why I started this podcast. I never had any, I didn't have a business plan or, I never looked at it as a way to make a living or anything like that. And believe me, it's still not at that level, right? Don't get me wrong. With the ad revenue and when times were good, the podcast was making a couple of bucks. Nothing to write home about though, that's for sure. So I never really even thought about monetizing the podcast as far as merch goes or anything like that. But Jerry has some pretty good ideas. And, if there's any interest from the listeners out there, then we'll definitely start talking about perhaps going the merch route and some of this exclusive artwork that'll be available from Jerry too. So make sure you check out his website for sure. It's Pesce Effects. And he has some amazing stuff. If you're into fantasy and horror, science fiction, stuff like that, Jerry's work is literally top notch. And I'm not just saying that because he's a friend of mine, but his work is literally top notch. So make sure you check that stuff out and then contact me via email or on Twitter and let me know what you folks think. If you want some merch to be available, if we should open a merch store or something like that, well, I'll definitely explore it because as we move forward, the podcast is growing at just a huge rate right now. I mean, it's just increasing on a daily basis, and I'm having a hard time keeping up. If you want the truth, I'm having a hard time keeping up with all of the social media, all of the emails, doing the research. It's a lot. But I'll tell you what, I wouldn't trade it for anything at this point. We are so deep into this case right now, and things are moving at such a fast pace that I wouldn't want to be covering anything else at this point. And I wouldn't want to be talking to any other group of people rather than you at this point because this case is it's right out of a book, right? This is something you would see some author would come up with at their mountain retreat and put it down on paper. This isn't real life kind of stuff. So moving forward, If there's interest in something like that, then I'll certainly explore setting something up as far as merchandise goes. But this is, like I said, it's never been a vehicle for me to build wealth or anything like that. If you're looking to make money and you want to become a podcaster, you're in the wrong business. This isn't the sort of business where you make a bunch of money. This is the kind of thing where you have to grind on a daily basis. Just keep grinding, keep pumping out content, and just keep it moving. And you want to make sure that things don't get stale. So that's why I was talking with Jerry about doing a revamp of our artwork, getting a new icon, and all of that good stuff. So with that, and, perhaps some exclusive artwork from Jerry and an actual merch store from me and the podcast, if that's something that the audience is interested in, let me know and I'll start moving towards that direction and perhaps, get out a hat, maybe a shirt, some mugs, whatever it may be. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not very good at this whole part of it. The whole entire, monetizing things like this it's never been my forte. I'm a content creator, a researcher. I report the news, I cover the news, but I've never really been big into like marketing myself or trying to push the podcast as something that should be heavily monetized. But with all of the downloads and all of the interest, if the listeners want me to create stuff like that and some shirts and some hats, coffee mugs, the exclusive artwork, a line of exclusive artwork from Jerry, then again, like I said, I'm certainly willing to explore those areas and see what's what. But for me, the main goal here, the main important facet of this whole entire thing that I always try and keep into perspective and make sure that it's the only thing that's guiding me is A, justice for the survivors, and B, prosecution for those who are involved. Those are the only two things that I really care about in this case. If we open a merch store or something like that and it makes a couple of bucks, great. All that's going to do is make the podcast better. All that's going to do is give me more capital to get out to the locations that I want to get out to. I've already been out to Santa Fe with the help of the audience here, and that's what I plan on doing. With any capital raised from this show, it goes right back into the podcast to try and make it better and more of a guide for those of us who are following the case and more of a resource. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's all about compiling this information and making it available to the general public so that people can be aware of just what kind of disgusting individuals are running things at the very top. So going forward, that's something that I'm going to be working on, and I'll be relying on you folks to shoot me some emails and, contact me on Twitter, whatever it may be, and let me know if there's some interest there. And if there's a interest, then I'll definitely talk with Jerry more about an exclusive line of artwork for the podcast, and obviously we'll talk about merchandising as well. If people want to get some shirts or some hats, I'm sure I could whip something up and get it cracking. So that's the first thing. And then the next thing, I had a question asked of me, and I thought it was a pretty funny question. Somebody asked me if I had to spend quarantine with one character from a TV show that is currently on TV, who it would be. And for me, it's not even a question. There's only one person that I'd want to spend my quarantine with from a TV show that is currently on TV, and that is the man, the myth, the legend, Bobby MF'n Axelrod. If you haven't watched the show Billions yet, drop everything that you're doing right now, including listening to this podcast, turn it off, and go watch Billions. The show is absolutely phenomenal. And if I had this many days in quarantine with somebody like Bobby Axelrod, oh boy, imagine the knowledge that you would retain from your conversations with a guy like that. I'd walk out of quarantine ready to take Wall Street over. So I thought that was a pretty cool question, and I wanted to ask you folks as well. If you had one character from a TV show that you could be quarantined with, who would it be and why? Send me some emails and let me know. All right, so on to our article for the day. Today we have an article from the Daily News, and this article has to do with Darren Indyke. Now, we've talked about Darren Indyke plenty on the podcast. We know that he has been less than an honorable man when it comes to his relationships with Jeffrey Epstein, and I am also on record saying that I don't believe he should have any part of being an executor for the estate, considering how wrapped up he was with Jeffrey Epstein. So we have a new article out today from the Daily News that's covering that subject. The headline, Co-executor of Jeffrey Epstein's estate faces questioning under oath over extensive ties to pervert. This article was authored by Stephen Rex Brown. The co-executor of Jeffrey Epstein's estate faces questioning under oath next month about his longtime ties to the pervert, a source tells the Daily News. Yeah, he should be facing questions. Darren Indyke was attached to Jeffrey Epstein's hip for years, and I've coined him as Jeffrey Epstein's in-house lawyer. We know that that's the case. We know that Indyke was involved in all of these Epstein moves. We know that Indyke was there guiding his hand. And the fact that he is the executor of the estate is a joke at this point, in my opinion. And I've said it from the beginning. This man should have nothing to do with dispersing funds to survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, considering he was complicit in their abuse. Darren Indyke is scheduled to be deposed by attorneys representing Epstein survivors on June 22nd. It is perhaps the first time Indyke has been questioned under oath about his more than 2 decades of work as Epstein's lawyer. This is significant. Getting him under oath and asking him these questions is a big deal because hopefully he perjures himself and then they have a reason to arrest him because in my opinion, Indyke is very, very, very corrupt and he is up to his chin in Jeffrey Epstein's misdeeds. Epstein named Indyke and accountant Richard Kahn as co-executors of his estate only 2 days before hanging himself, allegedly, in his lower Manhattan cell while awaiting trial for sex trafficking of underage girls. A source said the attorneys will look to grill Indyke about his possible role helping Epstein maintain his supervillain lifestyle. Yeah, those are questions that shouldn't only be asked by the attorneys. Where are the prosecutors asking these questions? Where is the state or the federal government stepping in and telling Indyke and Kahn that they can't be involved in this? There's none of that. Why would they care? The state doesn't care about this case. That's surely the way it seems to me. All they care about is making sure that it doesn't blow up in their face. They don't care about justice for the survivors. They don't care about making things right. No, none of that. Indyke was Epstein's in-house lawyer of the Epstein enterprise, the source said. Yeah, I've been saying that for months. Now it's finally coming out in the legacy media. They're saying the same thing, which is good. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't care who said it first. I don't care who talked about it first. All I care about is that the information is getting out there to you, the public. This is not about me. Some content creators and some people who cover these cases, they like to make it about them. This is not about me. This is about those girls who were abused and taken advantage of by Jeffrey Epstein and his friends, and it's about the corrupt government that provided protection for him. Anybody who's trying to conflate the issue and make it about themselves is detrimental to the case. The deposition will likely lead to thorny conflict of interest questions about Indyke's status as executor of Epstein's $634 million estate and possible witness to alleged crimes committed by the financier, pedophile. Yeah, you would think that there would be a bit of a conflict of interest here. The guy has been his in-house lawyer for years and years and years and years, and now he's involved in doling out the dough? Now he's involved in making sure everybody is taken care of as far as settlements go? So what you're telling me is that we should be trusting Darren Indyke to be, I don't know, the arbiter of a moral decision? Well, I'm not willing to do that, and the court shouldn't be willing to do it either. The court should remove him however they can and get rid of him. He shouldn't be doling out money for the survivors. He should be hiring his own defense lawyers to defend his actions within Jeffrey Epstein's enterprise. He'll also be questioned about whether he has any knowledge of surveillance footage from inside Epstein's properties that has seemingly disappeared, the source said. Oh, it just disappeared, huh? I thought the FBI raided the house. I thought the FBI was in possession of all of these videos. Now they disappeared? No, they didn't disappear. If anything, they were destroyed by people like Indyke, by people like Sarah Kellen Vickers, by people like Leslie Groff, etc., etc. The same people that are still running around right now escaping justice. Indyke will be asked about whether he helped secure living arrangements for Epstein survivors. Public records show the 55-year-old Long Island native had a former address at 301 East 66th Street where many Epstein survivors, employees, and guests also stayed. Yeah, we know that building was filled with Epstein associates, filled with people that were being abused by Epstein, and we know that Mark Epstein was heavily involved in that as well. So we've established that Indyke had an office there. All of these people were involved with Jeffrey Epstein, all had these apartments and these offices, etc., at this building at East 66th Street. The federal government can't put the two and two together? They can't tie these pieces together? He can expect questions about whether he has any knowledge of VIPs and young girls on Epstein's plane, which was nicknamed the Lolita Express. He'll also be quizzed about his involvement managing Epstein's payroll, including any role he may have had in payments to employees after the pedophile was arrested last year, the source said. Yeah, look, we know that Epstein was paying these girls big-time dough, $200,000 a year, not because they were good at what they did, but because they were loyal, but because they were wrapped around his little finger, and they were willing to lie for him. That is why they got that money, basically hazard pay. And the fact that Indyke was in charge of doling out dough like that, basically hush money, it's not a problem with anybody. The federal government doesn't have a problem with that. What's Maureen Comey doing right now? Sipping some tea with her dad up in Westchester County? Nobody is anybody chasing down the co-conspirators in this case, or what? We just forgot about everything. Moving on. What's the deal, SDNY? An alleged Epstein survivor claims in a lawsuit against the estate that Epstein's longtime New York attorney arranged the legal paperwork for her sham marriage in 2013 to another Epstein survivor who was not a U.S. citizen. The suit does not identify the attorney. Well, we know who the attorney was, okay? We know that Dershowitz isn't handling things like that. For all of Dershowitz's faults, we know that he's a high-powered trial attorney. He's not going to be sitting around handling paperwork. So we can forget about that. There's no chance that's happening. Obviously, it's Darren Indyke. It is obviously Darren Indyke. What you're describing is a conflict of interest, probate attorney Jeffrey Weinstein said. He can't be representative of the estate if he's a witness to charges that may affect the estate financially. Yeah, no shit. I'm glad somebody else is finally saying it. I'm just, a regular average guy, and I've been chirping about this for how long? And now we're starting to hear it in the legacy media finally? I mean, come on, catch up, folks. The Daily News exclusively reported in March that Epstein's Eastern European girlfriend at the time of his death, Corinna Shuliak, married an Epstein survivor in 2013 and finalized a divorce after his arrest. Shuliak and the woman divorced in July 2019, shortly after the pervert was arrested. We've seen this several times from Epstein. Maneuvering, finding ways to keep people in this country, finding ways to get people into this country, and once they're in this country, keeping them under his thumb. Over and over again, we've seen this behavior, and you know what is so weird and so odd? That Darren Indyke seems to be involved in all of it. Epstein appears to have been Indyke's client for his entire career, according to an August 2009 Yahoo Finance article. Indyke's name appears on documents linked to Epstein's charities, properties, investments, and business dealings. All of that alone is enough to have this man taken off of this case. He should be nowhere near this. He should be worried about his own defense, and he should be fighting RICO charges at this point. Epstein filed his will in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The estate is seeking court approval there from an independent claims program that would allow victims to receive compensation from the pervert's abuse and keep their cases out of court. Approval of the program has been tied up in court due to the opposition of the Virgin Islands Attorney General. In the meantime, survivors' lawsuits against the Epstein estate are proceeding into a phase in which both sides exchange evidence. Yeah, I don't think the estate is going to like the evidence that gets brought to them, because Indyke is certainly going to be named within this evidence. I mean, in my opinion anyway, he has to be, right? He was such a huge factor in all of this that it would be impossible to keep him out of that. Emails to Indyke's criminal defense attorney and attorney for the estate were not returned. Isn't that odd? We never get anything returned from these people when they're asked, right? They never have anything to say. Mum's the word. We didn't do anything. Look, it's a joke that Darren Indyke is involved with this estate. It's a joke that nobody has stepped up and removed him. And it's really a joke that he thinks that people are going to believe that he is some sort of moral participant in releasing funds to people that he took a part in helping be abused. In my opinion, Darren Indyke is one of the biggest parts of this whole entire operation and somebody who must be scrutinized further. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, we'll be back later on and we'll do it all over again.